What's going on? This is Kingfisher here. Today I want to take you through how I made this bouncy melody that I could hear an artist like Dababy or Jack Harlow on. So to start off this melody, I laid down a piano that had a lot of bounce to it. I used a 1-5 chord progression in the key of F minor to give the melody some of that tension and the right vibe that you need for these type of samples. I made sure to leave a lot of space in between the piano stabs because I knew I wanted to add other instruments in afterwards. Leaving space in the piano like this really lets you add other elements to the sample and fill in the pockets created by these gaps. As far as effects for the piano, all I put on it was an RC20 just to give it that vintage feeling. For the second element of the sample, I added some mallets that I found in the chord Triton. I laid down a simple triplet pattern that followed the chords of the melody. The effects that I put on these mallets consisted of a sketch cassette just to give it some imperfections, a parametric EQ to cut out the low end, and a Valhalla room just to spread it out in the mix a bit. Once I had the foundation for this melody looping, I knew I wanted to add some flute. I recorded some melody ideas with my live flute and chopped them up into a call and response pattern. When I'm recording live instruments like my flute, trumpet, or even vocals, I like to record them at a slower BPM and then speed them up after the fact because it gives them a cool effect. The only effects that I put on this flute was a Valhalla room reverb to give it some space in the mix. After I'd finished processing the flute, I knew I wanted to add some electric guitar top lines. I chose to keep the guitar top lines fairly sparse but repetitive to emphasize certain parts of the sample and make it more catchy. The effects that I added to the guitar consisted of a wow control by Goodhertz, the Start guitar amp plugin by Clevgrand, an EQ to cut out the low end, and a Valhalla room reverb, again just to give it some space in the mix. At this point, the sample was starting to fill out, but I knew I wanted to add a live bass to it. I actually played this bass line on my electric guitar and then pitched it down an octave afterwards, which is a good substitute if you don't have an actual bass guitar on your hands. The bass line essentially follows the root notes of the chord progression, but I added some extra notes in there to give the melody some more bounce. Once I had finished recording some bass takes, I chopped it up and routed them to a mixer track. I added a bass guitar preset that I found in Effect Rack and a parametric EQ just to cut out the unnecessary high end. The final element of this melody that I added was a mellotron flute for a verse section. I laid down the same chord progression as the main piano, but played a different rhythm just to give the melody a different bounce for the verse section. So that's essentially my process on how I would make one of these types of melodies. If you found this video helpful in any way, it would really help out the channel if you gave it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. So with that being said, we'll see you in the next one.